Yes, we can start the video if did the video stop midway or what happened? Can anyone from the GMEC team confirm whether the video has been completed?
Ankit, are you there? Sir, I'm calling him.
Okay, okay. Or they can write on the chat box as well. I mean, or otherwise we can do away with that if we, because it's just about 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay, sure, sir. Good evening, Professor K. Srinivas. How are you?
Good evening, Dr. Archana. I'm good.
Thank you.
Hope I'm on time.
Yes, you are perfectly on time, sir. Hi, Sweta.
Thank you.
Hi, Archana. Hi, Uma.
Hi.
Hello, Professor Srinivas.
Hello.
Nice
Hello,
to
how
meet
are
you
you?
again.
How are you? Same
Good,
here,
sir.
man. Same here. Same here. Pleasure to meeting you. Namaskar.
Same here, sir.
Actually, the entire team is sitting in various places and in various cities, and and in certain parts of the where today's team is, probably the network is not as good, so the video had to stop midway. I'm not sure whether we are going to have it again, but we'll make sure that we start on time. So it's still 28 minutes past 7 here, so we'll wait for another 2 or 3 minutes before we begin. So,
Hi,
Shweta,
Michael.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah.
Oh, you were saying something?
yes, how's the cold there in Delhi?
Oh, it is cold, but I think it is slightly getting better, a little warmer. So these are good signs. Not sure.
But still inside the house, it was pretty cold.
Yeah, that's true.
Here in Kolkata, it's it's slightly less cooler than it was yesterday, but yesterday it was like so for us, if it is around 13 or 14, it is quite cold.
I know.
Nothing like Delhi. Delhi can be very, very cold,
Yeah. I think Jammu and Kashmir.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I think
Archana,
Delhi is like experience extending. Archana is sending all those things to us.
Everywhere around 100 kilometers away from Jammu, everywhere there is a snowfall. Students are sending pictures. There is a lot of connectivity problem issue is there, and we are into the cold wave. And Delhi is obviously getting the side effect of everything.
but it seems very warm out wherever Archana is there, isn't it?
Oh my God. Sir, please. I'm learning a lot from you.
No, but here I mean, I'm not in Jammu. Okay.
Well, it's below freezing here, so everybody is panicked because they're not used to it around here. So interesting times.
Climate change is real. This isn't far off. It's there, right there, with us.
And to top it all, you can't just go out and kind of engage yourself in anything else. So sitting in the home, you feel it all the more, as if
yes.
it's difficult to forget the chill.
Well, I've lived in places that have very, very cold climate, and they take pride on surviving the cold. It becomes a badge of who they are and their own resilience and persistence.
Absolutely, yeah, true.
So I think we can start, right? We can.
Yes.
So welcome, friends. On behalf of the Global Media Education Council, we are extremely delighted to welcome you to day 39 of our 75-day webinar series. As you must be knowing, this is coinciding with 75 years of India's independence, and we started this journey in October last year, and will continue till mid-April. We hope to complete our 75 webinars. And it's been a remarkable journey. Many firsts. First of its kind, where we had this kind of a gathering for almost every evening since when we began this journey. So this Global Communication Education Conclave has been a wonderful learning experience for many of us at Global Media Education Council, and thanks to all our honorable guests who made it possible, and people from all over the country, people from academics, professionals, corporate speakers, people, global experts, activists, and people connected with media and communication in every way. And today we are delighted to introduce the topic, which is online education and pedagogy, a sneak peek into the post-pandemic world. And webinars like these have been possible because of the hard work of our working committee members. I'm delighted to present to you the moderator for the day, Dr. Archana Kumari, who is an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication and Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She's working as an assistant professor in the Department of Mass Communication and New Media at Central University of Jammu. She has taught at IMC New Delhi, Central University of Kashmir, and Central University of Bihar in her academic experience for over 12 years. Beyond academics, she's been active in journalism as well and worked as a media professional in Hindustan Times Patna and in All India Radio and Sahara TV as well. She's the principal lead South Asia for Journalism, Education and Trauma Research Group, which is the JETREG, University of Lincoln, UK. She's a fact-checking trainer and has actively conducted over 30 fact-checking workshops in all over India, including in Jammu and Kashmir, Bihar, Punjab, Rajasthan, UP and Delhi, and trained around 2,000 journalists and journalism students over the last 2 years. She's associated with Media Literacy Campaign Fact Shala and BBC Young Reporter India to generate awareness towards fake news and how to fight it. She's also worked as a freelancer for many print and online media, and her area of interest include media economics, media literacy, development communication, new media, digital journalism, media research, and advertising. We take this opportunity to welcome the guests once again. The session chair, our old friend, Dr. Shweta Singh. We go back a long way, more than a decade, and I'm really delighted to see her here. And one of the concepts that has evolved with the GCEC is that the moderators get the freedom not only to choose the topic, but also the invitees. So this entire panel is because of Dr. Archana Kumari. And also we will be felicitating an eminent media educator today. So more of that later on. But welcome once again to day 39 of the Global Communication Education Conclave. Over to our moderator, Dr. Archana Kumari.
Thank you very much, Uma Shankar sir. This has been a very generous introduction, and also today's discussion. And I'm very much grateful to GMEC to provide this kind of platform to discuss on so much relevant issues. And when we were India as a country, I just want to give a little bit of introduction about the topic, because we were moving very slowly towards online education. There were so many initiatives by government like MOOC and Pathshala, EPG Pathshala, Swayam Prabha. There were so many initiatives, and in our university education also, we were using some kind of apps like Moodle and everything to go for blended learning. But it was the pandemic which compelled us suddenly and necessitated us to adopt this online teaching learning mode. The essentiality of going for the online option as imposed by the contagious virus has made people realize globally about the significant advantages of using technology to transcend the limitations of time and space. Extent of use of technology has risen in the last 2 years. Never we have seen this kind of rise before. Okay, and there is all possibility that online mode of education will be the most preferred and widely adopted mode of teaching and learning in the times to come. But with it, we have certain questions also to think about, to ponder upon, because we know that around 650 million people in India, more than that, even 680 million people in India are on internet in 2021. But I have seen the last check the data till 2021. But 50% of the total population of 1.33 billion people is still they don't have access to internet. They are not on internet, and we are talking about online education, online teaching and learning pedagogy. So there are some questions before us before we go totally and adopting this kind of teaching learning method and pedagogy, we have some kind of questions related to accessibility, related to reach of the this medium, related to the digital divide we are facing due to socioeconomic reason, due to gender perspective, due to regional issues. So these issues we need to address, and that is why perhaps, and the issue of digital literacy is also there. So that is why perhaps in new education policy there is so much emphasis on digital literacy also. But we need to, this is high time that we should discuss that how are we imagining this post-pandemic world? What kind of pedagogy are we going to use? Because we have so much of challenges related to examination. Whether are we going to go for online examination, and are we actually maintaining the sanctity of online examination? How are we dealing with the practical subjects, practical issues? Because media education specifically is a discipline which requires a lot of practical work. So there we have some certain kind of limitations. So this is the real. I thought that this is a time that we need to discuss on these topics. We need to address these challenges, and then we should probably go ahead and plan something in future in the post-pandemic world. And that is why this topic was introduced. And I would like to take this opportunity to also introduce a little bit that we are, as a voluntarily, on the voluntary basis, some of the media educators, Sweta is also there, and 11 of us are actually doing one kind of research work. And we are trying to see that how students are dealing with this changed online system, online education and its pedagogy, how teachers are dealing with it, and we are working towards it. And there are very senior academicians who are associated with it. Almost 11 of us are working on voluntary basis on this program. So we are really interested in knowing and moving forward in this environment, and that is why this topic was chosen. And before we move forward, let me introduce today's chairperson of the event, Ms. Dr. Sweta. And I would always like to introduce her as my senior in IIMC, but she is also assistant professor and course coordinator at University School of Mass Communication, Guru Govind Singh University, New Delhi. And she has worked as a television journalist with Doordarshan News. And she has also worked with some digital news ventures. She has contributed to the Network of Women in Media India report titled Panels or Manels, desperately seeking women in Indian TV news debates. And also she is associated with a project GMMP and a global study that monitors the representation of women in media. Her latest work is a co-authored research study titled Locating Gender Perspective in COVID-19 Reportage in India for Population First. The study is supported by UNFPA, Norway, and NWMI. She was recently invited to share the findings of research by Good Pitch India. She has been teaching journalism with emphasis on broadcast and digital media, development communication, and international communication. And her PhD thesis explores coverage of Arab Spring by news television in India. She has presented her research papers in all international conferences, IMCR, ICA, EMIC, and published research papers and book chapters on topics in the field of journalism. And as I love to say it first, that she is a product of Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi, my senior, and I learned a lot from her. With these words, I invite her to start this program and just give a takeoff from here.
Thanks so much, Archana. Totally delighted to be here, and all your kind words, rather very warm words, have kind of made me all the more comfortable for this evening session on this cold winter evening. And taking things forward, it is really my privilege to be associated with GMEC, the conclave organizers, Professor Uma Shankar Pandey, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, and everybody. So I really thank everyone for this opportunity. As Archana has already laid out, that we have been working for a research related to the topic as to how the pandemic has impacted pedagogy in India. And how students, teachers get differentially impacted in different parts of the country. So we have quite a huge database for this, and we have some broad initial findings, and we are in the process of getting into the report. So when Archana came up with this idea for this kind of a discussion on the topic, I readily agreed, and it was more so because it would probably also give me an opportunity to listen to everybody, and maybe extend our understanding as a cohort, as a team, and take things forward. So, but then we can probably think of a detailed discussion on what we are doing, maybe on some other day, just to take things forward. As I was thinking more on the topic, I chanced upon a report by Professor Biswajit Das, who has done a detailed study for SEMCA in 2018. And I was particularly fascinated by two very opposing ideas he cites in the very opening paragraphs of the report. One by Thomas Friedman, who talks about the world being flattened by technological interventions, and another by Larry Cuban, who actually says that he dismisses the role of technology in class. So he says that technology, according to him, has not been beneficial for pedagogy. And this is a citation from his book, Oversold and Underused. So, but I think between these two extreme opposing ideas, there's a lot in between, especially when it comes to a developing country like India. So as I foresee in the post-pandemic pedagogy, the educational frameworks, the structures, they will be heavily dependent on technology. And I can vouch for that because I have had some kind of interaction with Professor Srinivas before. So I have got some brief glimpse of where we are headed. And I'm sure the other panelists will be throwing some light on it. So technology by itself, we have discussed before, and everybody agrees here, I'm sure will agree, that can be an enabler, whereby it can bridge the conventional gaps and also maybe in the whole process create newer ones. So in the pre-pandemic world, the educators were kind of divided, especially in this part of the world, about allowing technology in classrooms. Many of us were hesitant, skeptical, and saw it as having some kind of a dehumanizing effect on education. There were others who saw technology as democratizing tool for a country like India, where brick and mortar structures are not sufficiently available to meet the growing demands of education. And I'm sure Professor Srinivas will dwell a little bit on that as well. So the educators and a lot of us, even students, saw online or digital interventions like MOOC and EPG Pathshala and Swayam Prabha and all those things that came by way of digital platforms to the educators and the students, as some kind of an enabling force, from where you can you can learn through these alternative platforms. And we are discussing all these in the times when, say, for example, for us, we have seen the transition from a non-digital space to a digital space. But we are discussing all this at a time when the digital natives, for example, find it very difficult to understand or maybe think that something like television is or has been a linear medium. For them, television is on digital, which is essentially a non-linear platform. So for them, it is difficult to imagine that digital television is or perhaps can be seen as a linear medium. Mobile phones have become extensions of our hands. So when the pandemic hit us in 2020, we didn't realize that as on date, we will still be discussing in the pandemic frame, within the pandemic frame, and not in a post-pandemic. We will not be in a post-pandemic world already. We were thinking it will all get over soon, but it did not. And we are not really sure how circumstances will change from here. But like Archana has said, we know that there have been huge digital disruptions, some of them being positive ones, but a lot of them have been we have been compelled to adopt and adapt. So there are very many data sources that do not give a very encouraging glimpse of online education in India in these times. And I'm sure much of South Asia and many other countries like India must be going through similar experiences. So in this, in the larger challenge that we have at this point is how to keep education human-centric while also benefiting from other online opportunities. So we know that there is good, the bad, and the ugly, especially in the socioeconomic and political geographical contexts. For example, we also know that the internet shutdowns in many parts of the country are not unusual. And I think Archana must be experiencing, and Archana and the region close to her is experiencing it very closely. There have been huge job losses affecting men and women. A lot of women had to respond to caregiving demands at home or the institution, or maybe because the institution shut down or they cut down on the number of employees and things like that. So because digital education is also kind of a huge reality and is here to stay, I hope the eminent panelists this evening will throw light on some of these pertinent issues while taking a sneak peek on online education pedagogy in a post-pandemic world, and also engage with the impacts of the technological shifts on students, educators, researchers, and more. It will also be nice to kind of engage with engage with how the administrative bodies who are related to various educational setups, whether the schools, colleges, universities, whether it's the UGC or maybe the Future Higher Education Council or the other educational bodies, how do they need to evolve, keeping in mind the post-pandemic scenario, and change their ways of facilitating and assessing pedagogy and its quality in India. So I'm all set to listen to everyone here. So Archana, back to you.
Yes. Thank you very much, ma'am, for setting the stage. And yes, very pertinent issues which you have raised, that how are we going to adapt to the change? And before I invite our esteemed speaker, who is chief guest of the session, let me introduce him. Although introducing him is a very tedious job because I was seeing his profile, it is too much to say. So Professor K. Srinivas, who is head of ICT and Project Management Unit of National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, very popularly known as NUPA, a Government of India Ministry of Education institution in New Delhi. Dr. Srinivas holds a PhD degree in computer science and has been utilizing open source ICT tools and technologies in teaching, learning, and student evaluation since 1990. Both at the graduate and postgraduate levels. His areas of interest are e-learning, blended teaching, MOOCs, ICT-enabled pedagogy, a computer application in project management, e-governance, and he is having more than 30 years of teaching, survey, research, industry, and consultancy experience. Professor K. Srinivas also conducts teacher training workshops both at schools education and higher education across the country for teachers. He has written a number of articles on different aspects of university automation, e-governance, training needs, etc., which has been published in research journals. He has also participated in a few international forums and presented papers on various aspects of e-governance, blended online mode teaching, MOOC, etc. And regarding being the member of certain means in numerous kind of very reputed positions in organizations like IIT and the core committee member of e-learning in JNU. He has been everywhere, and I thought that who could be a better person to speak about what kind of situation we are going to face and how are we going to cope up with the situation and how fast we can actually adapt to the change. So Professor K. Srinivas is here to enlighten us on all these issues. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Archana. kindly let me know how much time I have so that I can put forward my views.
So you have 15-20 minutes.
Great.
You have.
And I request you to kindly stop me if I exceeding my time limit, because I'm a little long distance runner. So suddenly you're asking me to run for 100 meters. So I'll try my best to do it. And I'm very grateful to this conclave organizers and Dr. Archana, and of course, Dr. Sweta for extending the invitation to me to put forward my views on this a very interesting and need of the hour online education, pedagogy, and post-pandemic, the situation. First and foremost thing, being a shortage of the time, let me put forward my practical, real-time views and the issues and challenges which on a day-to-day. And apart from this, I would love to associate with what Dr. Sweta and Dr. Archana, they are doing that project work. If there is a scope for me, I'll definitely want to join. The reason why I'm saying, since 1st April 2022 till today evening, around 55,000 people I could able to train, and not only in India, and of course outside in UK and Australia and some African countries. So of course the situation remains the same across the world. So the first and foremost thing, whether it is a face-to-face education, online education, or a MOOCs mode of teaching, one thing is very sure: we want to make the process of learning impactful, engaging, interesting, and challenging. So the logic is when suddenly when the 1st April 2020 onwards, when the first lockdown kind of things have been announced, majority of the teachers, and before that, let me tell you one interesting anecdote. Since last almost 15 years, I'm practicing these techniques in my classroom teaching. So like means in classroom learning as well as the outside the classroom learning. And of course, nook and corner of this country I traveled, but thanks to this small virus, who definitely pushed many of the faculty members to adopt as well as adapt these new things. But the main issues remains here, as Dr. Sweta rightly said, technology is an enabler. Technology is a facilitator, no doubt about it. But the effectiveness of the technology is directly proportional to three important things: the competence, intent, and the attitude. So what is happening is many times we are lacking the competencies and we are lacking the intent and attitude also. If these things are raised at certain point of time, and then naturally the process will be now coming to the we also know about there is an initiative by the Government of India in the name of New Educational Policy, and of course the technology was given very important part into that. There is one interesting part where I associated is the blended mode of teaching. Even though Government of India is very serious about the digital, imparting the digital education, at the same time they want to provide the equal opportunities for the face-to-face mode. In that regard, the blended mode of education has been, statement has been made. And they have constituted a committee consisting of 5 experts in this relevant fields. I'm one of the member. And we made very serious efforts to prepare a document. And we made it in such a way that, first and foremost thing, there are issues about the training of the faculty members. There are issues about their attitudinal issues. The third important thing is, how do we convince the faculty? Leave about the technologies are not available. Because the kind of spectrum I'm handling from the sciences, social sciences, humanities, and engineering, one of the biggest challenge which I could able to address is, how do we convince the faculty members? Convincing means, how effectively we can use. There are so many options are available. That's one part of it. Second part is, of course, the poor internet, poor network infrastructure, which is again affecting many of the students as well as the faculty. And the last but not the least, the institutional culture. It also matters a lot. I'm just highlighting few of these issues because the faculty training, it's like a three sides of a triangle. Like one side you have a hardware, second side you have a software. Software means, I mean to say, about the synchronous learning platforms as well as the asynchronous learning platforms, and of course the human way. The teacher is most important for me to take this one forward. But what is happening is, in the name of online education, and let me tell you the actual scenario. Still it is, because even today I have handled one of the centrally funded university faculty training program. So I asked one small simple question that, what are the procedures you have been adopting? Okay, you have been taking the classes through Zoom 2 hours of 2.5 hours. And of course, in your class, there are slow learners, there are average learners, there are gifted learners, there are some introverts, there are some extroverts, and so many issues are there. So how do you engage them once they reached home? Because you'll be having a class only in the next week. And coming to the practical part a little later. And one of the professor has answered very certainly, said, no, I'll uploading some videos. I said, what is the uploading some videos, and what is the connectivity between your the video to the class and the class to the video? Because once the class is over, we want to provide some activities for them to do the needful. And once they do it, and we had to come back. And at the same time, then I asked, what are the small innovations you did? Then he just laughed and saying that I'm just repeating whatever the way I have been teaching the class. So to take the answer from that, I'll tell you two interesting processes which I have been doing consistently for quite some time. First one is, we need to break our classes in 90 minutes class or 1 hour class into several components. Like there should be having a lecture component, there should be a discussion component, there should be a demonstration component, and there should be a hands-on activity component. And unless and there could be a small group activities, there could be a large group activities. And before actually do all these activities, at least 24 to 48 hours before, we need to engage the learner to the extent possible, so that when they come prepare for the class, the process will be happening here. So the biggest $1 million question is, will it happen? And first and foremost thing, of course, I will tell you one important point here. Whatever the challenges which we are foreseeing currently, and these challenges may be there in different size and shape previously, and will be there in future also. We never thought that the pandemic will be crippled the entire economies, and of course one of the biggest casualty was education. I completely agree that I'm the most preferred person to take the class face to face and conduct the lab activities and all, and do pen and paper examinations and so on and so forth. But if the situation was not is providing the congenial environment to do the needful. So we need to explore the possibilities, and we need to evolve it and to see that what best can be possible. That's one part. The second important part is, and we were, even though there are some excellent free open source learning management systems are available, I still fail to understand that why we have not adopted to the extent possible. So only we talk about whenever there is a thing. The logic, what I'm trying to say, that yes, there is an internet connectivity issues are there when you have a live classes. Even you see that this kind of session also, even though I'm having 1 Gbps connectivities at home, it's being saying that your internet is unstable kind of a thing. My point is that whether your internet is stable or not, anyway, the lectures are being recorded. And if there should be some facility for the students to access those things at home on their ease, because every learner's learning pace is different, learning space is different, learning time is different. So in the name of online education means it's not giving a live lecture. And there should be excellent facilities are available, and so that we can engage, motivate, and support the students outside the classroom. To do this kind of an activity, like of course we may be talking about the learner centric environment, but unfortunately what happened when the first pandemic phase of the pandemic, we majority of the teachers the experts are very minority, the majority of the teachers have moved from conventional classroom teaching to this Zoom mode of teaching using the synchronous learning platforms. So using a PowerPoint presentation and start giving a lectures, and PowerPoints are so much lengthy, and they started sharing this PowerPoint presentations to some other means and all. And initially it was good, but gradually one of the biggest challenge, because I'm also a parent, my daughter is also pursuing law, my son is also pursuing the higher education. So what we started noticing is everybody started getting bored, saying that no, the typical way of doing it. So how do we get out of that boredom? And how do we make, again, let me repeat the four cardinals which I explained in the beginning. How do we make the process of learning impactful, engaging, interesting, and challenging? If you can only give an extempore lecture, or if you can give the process, it will not work. There are certain processes. We need to create a process in such a way that when the students are in front of you, I used to call it as in-classroom learning experiences. So there, the students are in front of you. Tomorrow, if the situation may ease out, and the students may be coming briefly 1 day or 2 days to the college, so we should try to see the system in such a way that we can need to engage them, and the classes can be conducted, and as well as lab process also can be conducted. But that's not the end of the game. And behind, once the class is over, there should be a mechanism that the outside the classroom activities also needs to be supported. In the outside the classroom activities, this is again part of our entire the report which we submitted to the Government of India. And the outside the activities consisting of two important things, because there is a big hue and cry that, even if, of course, I also do the same thing with my daughter and son, and it's a digital time, the screen time is more. So we started encouraging them. Wherever I used to conduct the workshops, I used to tell them that try to give non-digital modes of resources so that the students can able to access that. So the logic is pretty simple. Whatever the way we drive them, they will follow. If we don't do that naturally, then we expect that miracles to happen. Like in education, we all know very well that, so one component could be non-digital component. Second one could be a digital component. Second important part is there is something called a collaborative learning environment. So learning from peers, learning from their source, learning from their seniors, and learning from the teachers. So that process also need to be created. To do all these things, one of the important thing every teacher needs to understand, again, the 6 important principles. One of the important principle is about the designing part. So how do we design your class? How do we plan your class? Second one, the selecting the appropriate pedagogical approaches. I'm not here to talk about technology versus pedagogy and pedagogy versus technology. Both are interconnected. Both are very much needed. Without the pedagogy, nothing is going to happen. But what is important is, especially in the mode which I'm talking about, the blended mode of teaching, what is important is you need to select an appropriate pedagogical approach. So ultimately, you want to see that how best can be done. The second one is pedagogical knowledge. The third interesting thing is about the resources. And both Archana and Sweta has mentioned about, we have excellent resources are available by the Government of India in the name of Swayam, which is India's first MOOCs platform. Swayam Prabha, India's first finest 34 free TTH channel. EPG Pathshala, National Digital Library, IIT Bombay Spoken Tutorial, FOSSEE, and of course, we at NIPA also developed an excellent platform for last 75 years digital documents we have put forward. So the first source of information, they can take it from these resources. Second, there is again a good quality resources in the name of open educational resources. The Creative Commons attributed content is available there. And of course, you can take TED Talks, and so much material is available. Second point, every person, at least minorly, if you look at these kind of things, at least 20% or 25% of the content only need to be developed, for which there are excellent tools, simple, easy to use tools are available, and you can develop the videos, you can make the interactive videos. Whatever I'm talking about is not a rocket science. It is possible, and it is being happening. But what is important for us is the first of all subject knowledge, planning and designing, and understanding about the pedagogical issues, and coming to this the resources. The fifth important thing is the delivery platforms. So in a blended learning environment, there are two delivery platforms, and we need to sync these two delivery platforms. One is the delivery platform when you meet the students face to face. Then the second delivery platform when we deliver when the students are using the resources at home. So already there is one pedagogical approach. The Indian version of the MOOCs has already given the 4-quadrant approach. There are e-tutorials, there are e-content, there's a discussion forum, which is a collaborative learning environment. And of course, there are activities and assessment. That's very much there. So what is, then comes the, how do we transact the course? So how do we build the syncing between these two things? Because we all know very well it is inevitable, and we cannot afford to lose many more classes. And of course, very, very importantly, we all know, and even, of course, I also, one of the part of the academic. So suddenly you cannot start, whether it's a school education or, university education or a research level, you cannot start suddenly. So there are certain options which is being done. Coming to the end, and the last two important points in that thing is the assessment and activities. We are only focusing on the assessment, whether it's an MCQ or an open book examination. There are excellent activities are available. Excellent activities are available. When the students come to the campus, you can have pen and paper examination, we can have brainstorming, we can have small group activities, we can have a large group activities. When their students are at home, the discussion forum and wiki, and so many, of course, MCQs and all these things are very much over there. And the last, which is very important, very critical, is about the student interaction. So how do we motivate the learner to learn? How do we engage the learner to learn? How do we encourage the learner to learn? See, it is a special situation, like we academics, we senior faculty members are feeling. And just imagine the scenario of the students at home. Many of them could not be able to afford the laptops and desktops and mobile phones, and so many diversities there. Friends, I must tell you, interesting factor here. Initially, we are thinking that it's only happening in this country, but many parts of the world, it's being happening there. But the degrees are different. Initially, it may be a 30% in India, it may be 20% somewhere else. So my point is that, and that the role of a teacher is very, very important. Because the teacher, instead of confining its role, I think it's mostly towards the post-pandemic. Right now, all of us are doing, moving from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. So that, and second thing, we teachers cannot compete with World Wide Web, because there is so much is already there. We need not create it. But whatever is available, and we can drive them towards the students, so that the students can able to, of course, effective learning problems, and so much content is available. And what is important is the appropriate scaffolding of the students. So if these things supported with the support of the students, I think definitely the post-pandemic we could able to manage it. Second important thing is now it's a lesson to many of the educational institutions. And I can tell you one interesting, my own experience. I have been using the Moodle, kind of a free open source pedagogy based learning management system for the last 15 years in my own classroom teaching. When the first lockdown has been announced, and none of our students faced any difficulty as such. Only one thing, one subtle, simple SMS message I have sent to my students. From tomorrow onwards, the face-to-face classes will be closed, but we will be moving towards the Google Meet classes. But the out of the classroom learning activities and accessing of the resources, engagement of the learners, clearing of the doubts and activities and assessment will continue. So there is no big fuss about that. So my point is that I think that kind of a thing has to be brought into the notice of the student. Second important thing is, only we talk about the corporate social responsibility. Why don't we start about the faculty social responsibility? Many of the students we know very well, and they're having a different practical real-time issues and challenges are facing. Why don't we explore them? Why don't we create an environment in such a way that we can support? And there are many such instances are happening over there. Now, coming to the practical part of it, there is again, many of you may not be agree with me that no, practical means only hands-on. Yes, 100% I agree. The virtual labs having a very limited, like we have Amrita University has started an excellent platform, and IIIT Hyderabad. But now I think it's a high time, and there is one of the another committee where in the ministry, in the Department of Education, I got associated, and the technology enabled forum, where they are seriously working out to provide this. But I have one small alternative to that. I'm not saying that it's a perfect example. For example, there are excellent simulated environments are available. Why don't we provide the students with that simulated environment? I'm a professor of computer science. Many times I'm asking my students to do the work over there, but many times I'm engaging them that simulated environment to do the needful. We have excellent summative assessment tools like H5P kind of things are available. Why don't we use, I think now it's a high time. Post-pandemic means it's not only just talk. We need to go out of the box. Unless and until we adapt and adopt, and of course the capacity building of the teachers should be done. And very importantly, along with the capacity building, and even though you have excellent top class facilities are available, and it may not be solving all our purpose. As again I've been telling you, that technology cannot be solving all our educational ailments, and the effectiveness of these technologies should be connected with the competency building, and of course taking the students along with us. And yes, there are issues are there are challenges are there will be concerns. But what is important is, as a teacher, first of all, in my opinion, technology and pedagogies are definitely okay. But my biggest concern is about our teachers. First of all, we had to mentally prepare the teachers. Of course, there are subject experts, no doubt about it. Along with this subject expertise, we need to give this pedagogical expertise also, so that we can take it, we can address the post-pandemic effect in more effectively. I hope, Archana, I have completed
my... Yes, sir. Although it is always a pleasure to listen to all these, which you presented is as if that there is no problem at all, such a positivity. And yes, you are very right when you say that, first of all, we need to mentally prepare. We need to adopt this pedagogical system. And then the teachers are actually the people who will take it forward and who will actually use this kind of technology is only the enabler, and it is how we are using it and what kind of pedagogy we are using. So obviously we need to take a whole session from you on this particular issue. So but we are very much thankful that you have elaborated so beautifully and created so much positive vibes about it. Although I started with the negative things and challenges we are facing, but you are actually you have converted it completely into so much of positivity. So thank you very much, sir, for all your deliberation. And with this, let me invite Professor Uma Shankar Pandey again to announce our the eminent media educator today, Dr. Padmaja Shaw, and also about the Lifetime Achievement Award to her. So Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, sir, and
Yeah, thank you. Before I announce the award, once again, a big thanks on behalf of Global Media Education Council to Professor Srinivas and all the guests. As we know that this GMEC, the GCEC is supported by International Association for Media and Communication Research and the Media and Entertainment Skills Council. And there are a lot of things that we have planned in future, and of course, pedagogical issues in media and communication education is a major thing for us, and we are going to have even offline meets, hopefully, in a post-COVID era, and we'll keep you all informed. And that's where we'll need expertise of people like Professor Srinivas and others again. I have the happy task of announcing the Eminent Media Educators Award to one of our prominent senior media educators in the country, Dr. Padmaja Shah. So can we have the video, please?
Good evening to all of you.
Good evening, ma'am. Team GCEC, can we play the video? So we at the Global Media Education Council are indeed honored to honor you for your stellar contribution to media and communication education in India, and we'll be sending a hard copy of this certificate along with a token to your postal address. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting this award, and thank you so much for your contribution over the years. A very small introduction to our eminent media educator. Dr. Padmaja Shah graduated with a master's degree in journalism from Osmania University and an MA in telecommunications from Michigan State University. She completed PhD in development studies and has been teaching at the Department of Communication and Journalism, Osmania University since 1988. She has 2 tracks of interest, broadcast production and political economy of communication. She began as a television producer and made programs for children and young adults, later produced several educational programs for countrywide classrooms. She worked as executive director, programs and utilization for a bouquet of 5 educational channels in Andhra Pradesh, India. She has done research in broadcast media and print media and has provided consultancy for the educational media divisions under the government of Andhra Pradesh. She's a renowned international scholar, and she has been publishing in very prestigious journals all over the world. She contributes occasionally to the Media Watch website, The Hood, and writes a regular column in an English language newspaper daily, The Hans India, publishing out of Hyderabad. We are indeed honored to welcome you on behalf of Global Media Education Council, Dr. Padmaja Shah.
Thank you very much for having me and considering me worthy of your award. I'm truly honored, and I'm very happy to be here with Archana and my old friend Shweta and some of the friends with whom we have worked before. I'm very honored. Thank you. Archana?
Yes, ma'am, you can carry on your speech on the topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a brief presentation about, I'm going to tap into my experience as a journalism teacher for over 3 decades and put forth a few of my ideas that I feel are relevant this evening. When Archana suggested the topic of post-pandemic world and how journalism education is going to shape up, I was a bit daunted, because if pandemic has taught us anything, it is to refrain from predictions. The 3 waves of pandemic have made it clear to us that the only thing we can be certain about is uncertainty. However, as university teachers, we share a common concern about how we can reorient ourselves to the emerging challenges. Before the pandemic hit us, a crisis was already looming over journalism education, brought about by the technological transformation of media landscape. The decline of newspapers as we knew them, migration of news onto the online space, the dependence of news on giant corporate platforms for dissemination on the one hand, and swarming of online spaces by the tech-savvy trolls who have succeeded in polluting information ecology. Within the short space of a decade, internet transformed from the possibility of becoming a democratic global village into an evil empire of the corporate giants who trade in hate and profit from it. COVID added to this mix and brought the world to a halt. Globally, health and education sectors felt its impact the most. While the health sector was crushed under the excessive demand, the education sector wilted under the impact of COVID shutdowns. In India, COVID revealed the exploitative underbelly of both the essential sectors. The unrelenting privatization since 1991 that resulted in crippling the state-run institutions showed us that the private sector neither had the wherewithal nor the commitment to handle health and education as a public good. The COVID pandemic has brought the existing imbalances in our society into sharp focus, as it did elsewhere in the world, even as we recognized these imbalances and their existence earlier too. These imbalances cut across institutions, teaching communities, and the students excuse me, who flock to the educational institutions. The higher education scenario in India ranges from the small college located in a district center to the elite universities that boast of a global reputation. The wide spectrum encompasses colleges that barely manage to acquire one computer and still struggle to have stable access to electricity and internet, to those that are endowed with the cutting edge technologies and have access to global knowledge and databases. Understandably, while the elite institutions cater to the digital natives, the others have teachers who are still learning to use a computer and students who are yet to see a computer. This we have witnessed in our university, which was a state university, and a lot of our students are first generation learners. But when COVID arrived, all were expected to seamlessly pick up online education being offered and to benefit uniformly from the so-called universal access to education being provided through online teaching. Very little training was given to the teachers. Neither were questions about access to equipment and to connectivity thought through. Suddenly, the teachers in remote locations were expected to manage unfamiliar technologies. In places where teachers are able to cope, the issues of surveillance of teachers and students and privacy remain. There has been a mushrooming of privately generated commercial teaching material that is fixing frameworks for learning. In most colleges where journalism programs are being offered, there is a gross understaffing. One faculty member is expected to handle 40 students and all the subjects offered as part of the program. Teachers are compelled to fall back on ready solutions. Subjects like reporting and editing require intense personal interaction with the teacher, which is an impossibility under the circumstances. Much of our thinking continues to be input-oriented, teacher-centric, and technology-centric, and not oriented to learning outcomes. Our ultimate objective should be to benefit the students and facilitate learning. But the policies and strategies are oriented to ensure the survival and perpetuation of existing dysfunctional institutions. Critics of the educational system as it evolved in modern industrialized societies like Ivan Illich have debated the relevance of the institution of school for learning. In his Deschooling Society, written in 1970, Illich presciently says, we confuse, I quote, teaching with learning, grade advancement with education, diploma with competence, and fluency with the ability to say something new, unquote. He believed that schools laid the foundation for the institutionalization of modern industrial society. A similar critique is advanced by Thomas Clickor in his book, Media Capitalism. He says, universities remain highly relevant to media capitalism as they train functionaries, administrators, managers, marketing psychologists, PR experts, and spin doctors, CEOs, politicians, judges, and so on. Furthermore, universities remain one of media capitalism's main legitimizing institutions, delivering functional knowledge as well as crypto-scientific ideologies, knowledge that is useful for media capitalism's steering of society, useful to manipulate people, and useful to camouflage capitalism's pathologies, so that even well-educated audiences cannot necessarily detect propaganda or false information, unquote. It appears for media capitalism, digital divide and its consequences are not something to overcome, but a desirable fallout to its own advantage. The disruption created by the pandemic in media education offers new possibilities, however, of finding newer ways of acquiring and disseminating knowledge. Just as alternate media are posing a challenge to the corporate media, in media education too, there is a need to build alternate networks for learning by resetting institutional practices. The learning webs or learning networks that Ivan Illich presciently recommended 4 decades ago may help to connect individuals with sources of knowledge, wherever they exist, not necessarily in specific institutions. Illich identifies 4 different kinds of learning webs as summarized by David Buckingham. And these are reference services for educational objects, giving access to museums and libraries, skill exchanges where people could offer specific expertise, peer matching, where learners could contact partners for collaborative learning, and reference services for education at large, offering means of contacting teachers who may or may not be paid professionals. Illich favors informal, decentralized networks in contrast to institutions that privilege professional elite. He argues no one should have the right to dictate to anybody what and when they should learn. The learners must have the autonomy to seek information and knowledge to meet their needs. One of the problems many of us who taught at universities in pre-pandemic days was the increasing centralization of academic processes. Funding agencies like the University Grants Commission would prepare syllabi and curricula, imposing uniformity over a culturally and linguistically diverse country. Battles have been fought, battles have broken out over what can or cannot be taught in universities. This was a domain left to the academicians in earlier times when knowledge generation and dissemination was more autonomous from institutional control. In the case of state-run institutions, the prevailing system of full financial assistance and complete autonomy in academic issues stands reversed today, with complete control over academic issues and full financial autonomy that in effect translates to funding cutbacks and increasing commercialization of courses. Media departments in universities today are compelled to chase lucrative and ephemeral media trends in designing saleable courses to the detriment of the courses that strengthen core competencies required to survive and compete in media industries in the long term. This is a far cry from the vision of autonomous learning networks, where creative response to contemporary issues becomes possible. Post-pandemic world must finally also get back to systems that allow physical interaction of human beings. Dr. Emily Marchant, a British school education researcher, says that digital systems have their limitations of competence of teachers, students, and parents. She found that children who had parental engagement benefited while the others regressed. Dr. Tony Breslin, author of the book Lessons from Lockdown, The Educational Legacy of COVID-19, also emphasizes that sociability afforded by informal interactions, what he calls the water cooler moments, lead to a lot of learning. Even as bodies were piling up during the pandemic, The Intercept, the online journal, reports that something of a pandemic shock doctrine is taking shape. The report quotes the then New York State Governor Cuomo, calling Bill Gates a visionary and saying the pandemic has created a moment in history, I quote, when we can actually incorporate and advance Gates' ideas. He asks all these buildings, all these physical classrooms, why with all the technology that you have, unquote. The same Intercept report also quotes Anuja Sonelkar, CEO of Steer Technology, a Maryland-based company selling self-parking technology, as saying, I quote, there has been a distinct warming up to human-less, contactless technology. Humans are biohazards, machines are not, unquote. So we are looking at humans as biohazards now, and in this switch to technological dystopia, we are headed towards. It is evident that the corporate giants see the pandemic as an opportunity to further centralize, institutionalize online, and dehumanize societies for profit, while the core concern of scholars like Ivan Illich was to decentralize, deinstitutionalize, and to humanize societies. In Deschooling Society, Illich says, we need research on the possible use of technology to create institutions which serve personal, creative, and autonomous interaction, and the emergence of values which cannot be substantially controlled by technocrats, unquote. Media and information and communication are human endeavors that need to be driven by aspirations that benefit communities. Education, too, is a human endeavor. And all efforts must be made to build humane systems for a better future for us all. And with that, I stop. And I thank you very much again, the organizers, for giving me this opportunity to share my views, and congratulate you on organizing a session on this theme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for enlightening us. I know that you are not and you requested to keep it very simple. You are not a award person, but still, it was my temptation, and also the whole panel was there. And thank you very much for delivering all these important points, which comes from all your years of experience, and very beautiful narration of all the things, and very academic presentation, I must say, Padmaja ma'am. So I'm looking forward to read it also very soon. And with it, let me introduce today's keynote speaker, Professor Michael McCluskey, who is a very good friend, and I am really looking forward to hear his point of views, because as Professor K. Srinivas has also mentioned, that such kind of situation in the whole world, every country is facing. So it will be completely presenting a different kind of perspective when Professor McCluskey would be speaking on this topic. But before that, let me introduce him. that Dr. Michael McCluskey is a professor and associate department head in the Department of Communication at the University of Tennessee. And he is the author of 2 books, News Coverage of Global Disasters, Journalism's Power to Aid, Healing and Recovery. And I've got this opportunity to listen to this book discussion. And I found that, okay, it was a completely different kind of perspective, and journalism was actually seen as a positive power to heal, not only just to highlight and criticize, but also to bring out some positivity, to bring out some humane characteristic of this profession. So this was one very good book. Since I went through the discussion, I also got a copy of this book. Another book he has written is News Framing of School Shootings. News framing of school shootings and journalism in times of trauma and violence. His research has been published in several prominent communication journals, including Journal of Communication, Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly, Mass Communication Society, and Communication Research. Dr. McCluskey is a member of 2 journal editorial boards and has served as book review editor of Mass Communication Society since 2017. And prior to joining UTC in 2014, Dr. McCluskey worked as a professional journalist in the Northwest for 17 years and was on the faculty of California State University, Fresno, Ohio State University, and American University. He teaches a wide variety of courses in journalism and mass communication, and it is from his very deep and long years of experience in journalism, which is reflected in his book also. I must say that because I have gone through his book, so it is reflected in his book that how a complete amalgamation of and blend of a teacher as well as a journalist. Professor McCluskey, we are really eager to hear from you, your perspective on the online education and pedagogy. What are there in the store in this post-pandemic world? Over to you.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, and I really enjoyed the previous presentations. I think some of what I talk about will reflect that, but maybe from a slightly different angle. And the one thing that really, well, I always try to think of metaphors. So what is this environment like that we got forced into having to do online education? And I picture this person bobbing in the sea, looking for driftwood or anything that we can latch onto just to survive. And that's kind of how I felt back in 2020. But let me go back a year before. And in 2019, our university had been encouraging faculty to do online courses. And they had training available on campus, and I took the training, and I had all these grand plans about how I was going to introduce online education in the fall of 2020. And then suddenly we were forced into it. All of us were forced into it. And I really felt like I had the instructions on how to swim, but now I had to do it for real. So I feel like many of us are learning on the fly. We are doing the best we can. And if we are open-minded and paying attention, I believe we are learning a lot from these experiences, some of which will carry forward. And frankly, some of what I've done and what my colleagues have done has worked, and some of it hasn't worked. So that really means that you have to have your own personal antenna, always capturing signals to figure out, is it working or is it not working? And one thing that I've turned to try to understand this is the students themselves. I talk to the students and try to get their perspective, and they have definitely taught me a lot. And so I wanted to share some of those things, some of the things that I've learned, and some of the things that I'm not sure about. One of the things that I learned from the students is that the importance of connecting with their peers. So it's easy to think of the students as receivers of knowledge, but they are 19, 20, 21-year-olds with all the needs and desires of people that age. And we have to think back at what we cared about at that age. And many of them feel socially disconnected with a lot of online education. And that social disconnection makes it difficult at times for them to care and to concentrate. And so I've tried to adjust some of my teaching a little bit to have more interaction among students. I teach a class in research methodology, and we've always done create a survey in that class. And it turns out that it works really, really well in an online video environment, better than it did in person, that they can talk to each other, they can share documents. And for me as the instructor, I can give them very meaningful feedback along the way, better than anything that we did in person. So I see some benefits there, and I've tried to incorporate more of these collaborative activities where students are working together. The other thing that I noticed that was very fascinating is when we would do these group activities in person, there would always be dominant individuals who would carry the load. And it seems as if doing it in the video groups in many ways flattens some of those differences among them, and they're more collaborative, and they're more equal. The second element that definitely was missing is that connection with the instructor. So when you, the instructor, are in the classroom, you can see the faces of the students, you can tell if they understand it, you adjust on the fly based upon the responses that you get from the students. Much harder to do in online education, much harder to do in any sort of video environment. So one thing that I've done a couple things to try to change that. In my smaller classes, I have taken some days and just made them one-on-one time with the professor. And I've scheduled each student, and we will just talk one-on-one. And sometimes it's about things they're doing in the classroom. Sometimes it's about other things, but many of them need that connection. They need to turn that video face into a full person. And when you interact with each other, it cracks that a little bit. Another thing that I've done is leave a few minutes at the end of every video class, open time for individuals to talk. And most of the students, fine, there's nothing that they really want to talk about. But last term, I had this student who really benefited from that time. She would stay on the line, and she would, it turns out that she lived in a rural town about 40 minutes away. She lived with her mother who was disabled. So she never really got out. She never really connected with other people. And that time we spent together, and I got to meet her cat, and I met her mom once, and all of those types of personal connections really helped her. And she turned from a student who was struggling into one that was very successful by the end of that course. Kind of falling in line with that is another way that I've tried to make those personal connections, in that I have been more sharing about myself, about who I am, my hobbies, my interests, things that I did, my pets, whatever it was that was fun. And the students really appreciated that. And anytime you're doing online education, there's always surprises. So I met a couple of mothers, they pop in, pets. I had one student a year ago who had a bunch of parakeets. And so every time she would contribute to class discussion, you'd hear all the parakeets. And on the one hand, it's not directly related to education, but it established us all as individuals, and it just relaxed people to some degree. The other thing that I've learned that is very useful is the importance of organization. So I've always thought organization was important, but I think it takes on additional levels when we're trying to work on an online environment. So one thing I learned in my training for online education is how to set up a good website or a course management system. And that has been very, very helpful to my students because they get lost a little bit. And if they don't have that face-to-face interaction, they drift away a little bit. And by constantly updating material, drawing them onto the course website, I do things such as post extra videos on there that they should look at that are related to the next class, discussion questions for next class, which helps them be focused a little bit in terms of how they should be proceeding. So there's still a lot of questions that I haven't figured out. And fortunately, a lot of bright people here, and you talked about some of this. And one of them that I think is really difficult is, can online education be meaningful? Can we make this type of education match the quality and opportunities that we found within other types of education? One thing that I fall back on when I think about this is, as a media scholar, almost every type of media effect that we can think of, we find that there are portions of our audience that are negatively affected, portions that are positively affected, and most are not necessarily greatly affected one way or the other. So in many ways, online education is just another type of media. I'm going to look at this. We're using video, we're using websites, and so we need to think about that. So we need to think about those who just do not flourish in that type of environment and how we can help them improve. This is certainly a challenge that I don't have any answers for today, other than a constant issue and concern. I heard this discussed previously about inequities in online education, and it was pretty much put in terms of developing country, but we have those same issues here. So where I live, we're very fortunate that our local power company provides 1 gig internet service to customers. Fantastic. For me, 1 gig, I can do anything, but not all of my students have that same opportunity. They can't afford it, or they live in other areas. So how can we keep them at the same level? I had a student who, in the middle of trying to give a presentation, discovered that he didn't have enough bandwidth to continue, and he had to turn off his camera, and we had to do this scratchy audio. I've had students who have taken classes on their phone. So they use their smartphone, and there's a lot of limitations with that. The university I'm at has a lot of low-income students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and although we're doing the best we can to accommodate them, those discrepancies exist, and there's no easy way around it. Another issue that I find myself struggling with all the time is, as you might notice, I like to pay a lot of attention to how people are feeling, but we're all fatigued with compassion. We all have desperate times where we're trying to just get through the days, and how do we keep that same level of compassion toward our students and toward our colleagues? How do we keep pushing forward on our material to continually make it better and more engaging? We're fighting a lot of that great desire for everything to return to normal, but we're not there yet. I love the optimism of this topic. Post-pandemic, I'm worried about today and tomorrow in the pandemic. And I don't know how soon we're going to be post-pandemic, but I'm very much looking forward to that. Another thing that I think I've been trying to work on and haven't figured out yet is teaching persistence. So I can think of few examples in my years as an educator that were more proud to me than students who struggled and struggled and struggled, but kept trying and eventually figured it out. And I was working on ways to try to encourage persistence and teach persistence in the classroom. Really, the last semester we were fully in person, I was using some of these techniques to try to pull students aside and encourage them and talk about examples in class to try to serve as role models. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out a whole nother way that it's going to work in online education. And certainly we have other levels of persistence that we need to encourage among our students during COVID, where many of them are so discouraged and want that return to normal. And how do we keep that moving forward? And certainly there's some experts out there who, this is a very interesting field of education that is just developing about the importance of persistence in education. And I'd love to see what they are learning about persistence during this type of environment. So, in conclusion, I think that we have to recognize that we are still out in the sea. We have maybe found a lifeboat, but we're not to shore yet. And we need to think as broadly as possible the ways that we can provide the best education we can and learn lessons every day, make adjustments, and through those adjustments, hopefully we'll come up with something that will work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael McCluskey, sir, that you have presented so beautifully the struggle of a teacher, and I can very well correlate with it, because all of us are actually facing this kind of situations in classroom, and every day these challenges, we take it and we improvise ourselves, we change our situation, we adjust. Yes, very truly said. So all of us are sailing in the same boat. So with it, thank you very much. And now I would take this opportunity to introduce our next guest, who is a corporate speaker for our session. And it is also important to mention here that he is a very well-known professional photographer and certified master trainer, certified master assessor. And why I want his his point of view is also very much important. I'm looking forward, because he's a photographer, and we know that in mass communication and media, we have a lot of practical works which are inevitable part of our course. So how I just want to listen to him, that how can we approach these kind of practicalities and pragmatic problems, I would say, because I teach journalism, print media, and a lot of time it is very difficult for me. I try to devise new ways that how to give these students a feel of the field. Okay, so Prasanna, R. Prasanna Venkatesh, I would really like to hear from you. And before you start your speech, let me briefly introduce yourself. That this is Mr. R. Prasanna Venkatesh has a professional experience of 21 years, and he is a self-taught professional photographer from Chennai, India, specializing in celebrity and advertising photography. He is also a photo mentor who has done more than 200 workshops for beginners as well as professionals. And he recently demonstrated drone lighting for the first time in India, and is currently the brand ambassador for Govt's photo lighting equipment and brand influencer for Sony India. His YouTube channel for photography in Tamil has more than 75,300 subscribers. He has also got very good teaching experience, as well as he is an MBA in marketing also, but he left this MBA marketing profession to pursue his passion, and he has a teaching experience. He is a certified master trainer and certified master assessor. He was the official mentor for Nikon School India from April 2014 to September 2016 for Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. And he has done workshops in prestigious colleges across Chennai, We are looking forward to listen his experiences and his point of view of tackling this online teaching learning pedagogy and how to deal with practicality in this such environment. Over to you, Mr. Prasanna.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for introducing me. This session has been like really. I saw the profiles of people and I was like, what am I doing here? I'm just a photographer. So I was just very worried. But once I listened to what our honorable speakers have been discussing, that I have learned a lot of things from them. I've just picked up a lot of points and the new perspective. They've given us a new perspective in thinking. So as far as photography is concerned, we have had many disruptive factors in photography, like when the Kodak Brownie camera was invented, photography came to the masses. It became from certain people doing it, it became a popular hobby. Then we had this 35 film that was introduced in around 1936, and that was another disruptive factor. And the major shift was when digital happened, from film to digital. That was another major shift that happened. And I would say that this corona issue was another disruptive factor in photography, especially in learning photography and teaching photography. Because as we all know that we have different kinds of learning systems, which is a visual system. We have some auditory systems, and photography is a kinesthetic system where we need a hands-on approach. We definitely have to have a hands-on approach, like uh, uh, Dr. McCluskey said, it's like just learning, seeing a YouTube tutorial and trying to swim, or I would like to quote an example in this. Like when I was a kid, we used to have a car, and my dad used to drop me at school on his way to work, and every day I used to look at him drive, and I used to ask him a lot of questions. I was very inquisitive, and I used to ask him a lot of questions like, what is this and what is that and all these things. Like he used to say, this is the first gear, this is the steering, this is the clutch, this is the brake. I knew everything about the car. I knew what cc it was, what's the horsepower, what speed it went, and what mileage it gave, everything about the car.
I think there is some noise prop issue.
Okay.
Now is it clear?
Okay now?
Yeah, it is okay.
Oh, sorry. So again, the difficulty in online is this bandwidth and this noise and everything. I was there looking at him drive every day, and I was just there observing, and I knew everything about the car. But one fine day, when the day came where I sat on the driving seat, I couldn't even move the car. That was the truth, because there were lots of things that I missed out, a lot of nuances that I missed out on how to drive a car. So the same thing applies to photography also. There has to be it's a kinesthetic part. We can look at tutorials, we can look at the YouTube videos and everything. But the thing is, like photography, we need to have a hands-on. They need to have a hands-on approach. So this online sessions, when this COVID came, and then we had to shift the entire classroom to online. We had a lot of challenges because computers were not a challenge, because already whoever is into photography, they knew computers, the basics of computers. We work in Photoshop, and we work in various video editing, photo editing softwares, and everyone who is into photography, they know the basics of computers. At least they know how to even edit a photo on their mobile phones. Like we have a lot of apps like Snapseed, and they do a lot. They progress to a higher level with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. So what happened was, when we started this online sessions, and we do this physical sessions, we observe a lot of things from the students. We get to observe a lot of things, their strength, their weaknesses. As a mentor, we just see weakness, what is strength and everything. But in an online platform, we found it very difficult to assess these things, because a person will be very good in very interested in photography, people photography. He'll be like very interested in shooting portraits, very interested in shooting weddings, and he'll pass all the tests in online and everything he can do. Like he'll be technically very proficient. When it comes to the field experience, when he has to go and stand in a crowd, some people are very scared of crowds. Like they have this fear of crowds, so which we cannot judge while we do an online session. So that's a major drawback, because once what we do is, normally when we have a classroom session, then we take them out for a photo walk, where we just take them outdoor to some location, small location, just to explore with their cameras, and mostly is kinesthetic, so mostly a hands-on approach. What happened was, like after this online session came, we are not able to uh, judge the personality of this particular student. Like, is he an introvert? Is he an extrovert? Because online, it's very difficult for us to think. Second thing is, even in online education, there's another difficulty that we are facing is. The camera models. Like I'll have a class of like 20-25 students, and each one will be having a different camera model. Someone will use Nikon, someone will use Sony, someone will be using Canon. So when I start teaching about the camera settings, then lot of we get a lot of people asking, like, sir, where can I find the same setting in a Canon camera? So all these things, the confusion happens. What we do is, we just break the class into smaller modules and small sessions, and we try to spend a lot of time understanding their difficulties. But in a real physical classroom, it will just take 2 minutes for us to figure out. Like, I just walk to them and just say, please give me a camera. Then I'll just show them, sir, this is your setting, this is the camera. So now what happens is, they have to focus the camera on their camera. They have to show it on a video call. See, sir, this is there, and I have to just. It's becoming a slightly tiresome process. So what we do and we suggest is a blended mode, where we have a classroom session as well as an online session, where we have this basics of photography taught in online, like the fundamentals, which are like universal, like your shutter speed, like your ISO, like your white balance, everything. But there has to be a definite hands-on approach to this training. Otherwise, people might learn photography and they can online. But when it comes to real field experience and real practical shoots, they'll definitely lack that confidence. That confidence is the key to photography. You have to be like very confident. You have to have the what we call as a muscle memory and everything. We should be like all the camera settings and everything. It should be like one second nature to us. So that is one area where we are finding it very difficult. We try and adapt this blended mode, which is a hybrid mode of classroom and online sessions. So that's what we do. So this is what we are trying to do, and hope. So once this COVID thing started, everybody was very unsure about what was happening. So first, there was a little difficulty in understanding how to go about it. Like, so, the first online sessions we did in like in the beginning of the COVID wave was, we tried to adapt the classroom to the online session. We tried to adapt the same methodology of online classroom to online session, and we found out that it was not working because of these factors, like this kinesthetic factor, this students' personalities, the learning capacities, and all these things. So we are now trying to do hybrid classes, where we teach the kinesthetic part, hands-on part, as well as the online session, where we just teach them the basics, so that the education is more, the learning is more easier for them. That's what I feel, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Prasanna sir.
Hope it's okay. Hope it's okay. Yeah. I am not very elaborated.
No, you shared your experience, which is very much valuable for us. And for you, there is a question also by a very senior professor, Dr. Meera Desai. She is asking that, in your experience, what did the students learn most quickly with reference to photography class?
Can you come again, ma'am? I think
Yeah.
there's some
In your experience, what did students learn most quickly with reference to photography class? What was the part of photography class which you think that students learned very quickly?
Learning very quickly, sir. Photography is an art as well as a craft. So we have to art part they quickly learn, like composition. They quickly learn composition. But when it comes to cameras settings, like metering, like changing the autofocus modes, that they find it a little difficult. But when it comes to composition, the art part, they learn it very fast. They how to compose a picture. You use something called a rule of thirds and all these things. They learn very quickly. Other than that, this technical parts, they find it a little difficult, especially when it comes to professional photography. We normally say that your photography skills is only like what you say, like 30%. 70% is your people skills, like your personal, how do you behave, your soft skills, like what we call it as a soft skills, all these things. So we are trying to integrate everything into we are trying to integrate everything into this online module nowadays, ma'am, in this blended mode.
Thank you very much, Prasanna sir. And you showed us the way out, and you spoke about blended mode of teaching. You are just giving us clue that this is how we can actually
Yes, ma'am.
do.
Yes.
Yeah, we deal with the practical subjects because we certainly need some personal contact, some collaborative type of learning. Adaptive learning is also coming up. So, thank you very much for your suggestions, and I am sure that in this difficult time when we are most of the time we are struggling between offline online system, we can actually give the students some inputs by blended mode and using
Yes, ma'am.
using this blended mode. So thank you for sharing your experience so beautifully, Prasanna sir. And now I request the chairperson of this session, Dr. Sweta Singh, to conclude the session and give the concluding remark.
Thank you, Archana. It was really nice listening to such diverse perspectives on the issue of online pedagogy in the post-pandemic world. And as we began with Professor Srinivas, who is a believer in technology and a technology enthusiast, and we could sense from all the optimism that he carried with him in his presentation, and was kind of trying to make a case for all of us students, teachers, and all the stakeholders to kind of engage in an impactful manner and take up the challenges head on in the ways that we can, and how to kind of explore the possibilities and evolve in the whole process, and use maybe the very rich free open sources that are available. Many of us know about them, many of us are familiar, many of us may not be aware about it, but even those of us who are familiar are not using it. So that's the concern he has flagged, and we need to perhaps kind of try to find an answer to that, as to why is it that we are not able to kind of engage with the material that's already available. So that in itself is maybe an area of discussion and research. So he did make a case for open educational resources and tools that are available for assessment of activities. And according to Professor Srinivas, I think some of these things are doable, and maybe they will be helpful in kind of delivering our sessions a little better. So he has gone on to kind of make also talk about simulated environments that could be helpful. So maybe some of us who are not familiar with it, including myself, would love to engage more on this and how this could be more helpful. And then we had our esteemed panelist today, Professor Padmaja Shaw. So Padmaja Shaw has kind of given the other side of the story, where she kind of is making a realistic assessment of things around us. And she began by saying that it is difficult to take a peek into the future because that's what pandemic has taught us. And we are not certain about how things might unfold in times to come. And she did cite a lot of work by Ivan Illich, and she said that internet has changed the ways we engage, especially in media education. And internet was seen as a positive force, but over a period of time, very soon actually, within a decade or so, it kind of became problematic. And the expression that she has used is like polluting the information ecology. And that's something that we should be really concerned about. So our online presence, she has raised issues where teachers face when they go online about issues related to privacy, surveillance, and also their overall psychological well-being. So she has also raised some issues related to the fundamental issues related to education sector, which has to do with gross understaffing. And we often are expected to fall back on the readily available material, something that perhaps Professor Srinivas has talked about. So in media education, what is happening is that we are looking at the input-oriented and teacher-centric course and technological-centric approaches. So that is something that she has flagged should be looked at. She's also raised issues about digital divide and the need for alternative approaches to pedagogy, as through her citations of Ivan Illich's work, where she has made a case for the need for informal networks. As she says, nobody has the right to dictate what one should be studying or when one should be studying. So that's a very strong point that comes across from her presentation. And I particularly like the expression of water cooler moments that she has mentioned, that a great amount of learning comes from those informal engagements which are promised by physical spaces and physical engagement, which we really miss in online pedagogic approaches. So the ideas she has also touched upon about decentralization, about humanizing education. I think this whole this whole emphasis on technology being a panacea needs to be revisited, as comes across from her presentation. And she ended by saying that humane systems for all is the need of the hour. So we need to kind of constantly do a balancing act. Moving on, we had this presentation by Professor Michael McTusky, and extending the concerns raised by Professor Padmaja Shaw. Professor McTusky has also given us a way to tread the difficult terrain that we are into, by giving us the metaphor of wobbling in the sea and trying to figure out where those lifeboats are, and the need for constantly learning from in the process of doing newer things as we go along, experimenting with online education, especially learning from the students' importance. And he has emphasized on the importance to connect students with peers. That's a very, very strong, nice, this is a very interesting way of getting with the good practices that will probably be helpful for the students. So because he says that we have, students feel that they are socially disconnected from online education. So there's a need for collaborative activities and connect, which is missing in the online education. It is difficult to maybe harder to adjust in these times with the limited options that we have. So he has experimented with a lot of ways of making it, going for alternative approaches. So for one of them being giving students one-on-one time. I think this is something that perhaps is going to be helpful for a lot of us. But again, is hugely demanding on the part of teachers also. How we kind of factor that, because in any case, online education is very demanding for the teachers as well. So I like this idea of, that you mentioned about leaving a few minutes at the end for the students. So instead of just signing off after the session. So thank you for raising those questions towards the end of the session, which were very important. For example, one of them being, can online education be meaningful? And this is something that really all of us are trying to find an answer to. And most of us are just trying to take things as they come and really don't even have the time to engage with a pertinent question like that. And you also talked about how during this pandemic, the developed and the developing societies, countries are facing similar issues, though maybe slightly different experiences, but those inequities of different nature are there, especially when it comes to connectivity. So you do have students with lesser opportunities to connect, and you do have students who may not be having bigger desktops and laptops, maybe working only from smartphones. So in India, we have a scenario where we don't even have smartphones, and we are presuming that maybe we can still work with that kind of a thing around us. So yeah, thank you for all those experiential sharing today, Professor McCluskey, and especially as you ended that there is no easy way around. So we are here just to engage with the options. Thanks so much for sharing all those today with us. And we had a presentation by R. Prasanna Venkatesh, and he took us through his own experiences of engaging with students while teaching photography. And he says that kinesthetics is key to photography, like many other things that we do in practicals for mass communication education. And there is an art element of it, and there's a craft element of it that he talked about. And yes, we all feel that that art element is perhaps doable in whatever we teach, and it is at the craft, the craft bit that we get stuck and we find it a little difficult. So he has kind of just extended what most of us experience in our day-to-day teaching. And he thinks that blended mode is one of the options to take things forward. And I particularly like the metaphor that or maybe the analogy that you have used for comparison between learning driving and photography. So yeah, we all think that we have learned it, but when we actually comes to doing it by actually sitting and getting in the driver's seat, we realize that there's so much that we have missed, the nuances that we have missed. So I think those nuances perhaps is something that we need to pay more attention to, that how we are missing on those finer details that we need to be mindful of. So thank you. That's it from my side, Archana, as far as summarizing the session.
Thank you, Sweta, for beautifully summarizing and concluding all those important points. And I'm so finding myself fortunate enough to listen to this huge, diverse views and so many of solutions and experiences of these esteemed people, and they have shared their experiences. And I'm so much thankful to each one of you, because I know that you people are very busy in your schedule, and still you got time and spared your time on this so much important and valuable topic. I am really thankful to Dr. Padmaja Shaw ma'am, and I know that it was very difficult for me, and I find myself very fortunate that she agreed to be here on this occasion. So thank you very much, ma'am, for all your support, your deliberation. It is very much valuable for us. I'm looking forward to read it. Thank you very much, Professor K. Srinivas, sir, that you radiated this whole environment with your positivity. I can't tell you thank you enough that I re-energize myself as a teacher, that I might be able to do better in this environment. Okay, so that's one very good takeaway. And I know that I have learned Moodle from you, and it was very easy for me also when I told the student, okay, from tomorrow onwards, we are on Moodle. We are not online. We are not facing each other. We are on Moodle. So the same way that you said, I also said to my students, but still we are lacking that personal touch about which McCluskey was telling, and he was giving such a beautiful some of the his experiences, that how can we actually fill this gap of personal touch by talking about ourselves also. When we are not opening up as a teacher, the students will also not be comfortable in telling about themselves. So that's one very important point you gave us, that how to connect with the student. And Mr. Prasanna, you also showed us way ahead that how can blended form of teaching somehow it can actually do something, not actually remove all the problems of practicality, but to some extent we would be able to deliver in a better way if we are using this blended form of the teaching and learning. So thank you very much. And Sweta, I can't thank you enough for beautifully holding this whole event. You started, you set the stage, you concluded it beautifully, and everything you have said. And I really wanted to note it down that, okay, this is the gist of the program. So you concluded it so beautifully. Professor Umasankar Pandey, sir, who also spared a very valuable time in introducing this, me particularly, because I found itself very, because he is such a senior person, he was introducing me. So I'm really thankful to Professor Umasankar Pandey, Professor Chaudhary, who has provided this platform to discuss on these very important issues. And all those people, Monashri, Nymphia, Ankit, who are behind the scenes, but who are helping us a lot, all students who after the class hours also, they are sitting here just to listen to us. And many of those colleagues, fellow colleagues like Sunil Mishra ji, Shruti, there are so many people like Gauri ma'am was there, Meera ma'am was there. I'm so grateful that you all came and joined this discussion, because I really wanted that this is a very important topic. We all must brainstorm ourselves. This is the time that we must think that how can we do better, and what would be the way ahead, and how can we meet those challenges which we are seeing, and is there any, I know that there is no panacea. We all are facing the same problem, but we are struggling with it, and only we can find out a way out. So that is why I'm very much thankful to all of you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. And looking forward for many more such meaningful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.